All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name, please?
Greg Woodbury, Woodbury.
And what do you do for work, sir?
Lieutenant Paramedic on the Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire Department?
About 24 years now.
How long have you had the rank of lieutenant within the Canton Fire Department?
That's been 8 years now.
Now, prior to working with Canton Fire Department, what, if any, other work did you have within that same sort of field?
Prior to being on Canton Fire, I was an EMT paramedic in the North Shore area.
And if you could just, with regard to your working as a paramedic and a firefighter, specifically as far as being a paramedic, what, if any, sort of specialized training did you receive in regard to, or certifications did you receive in regard to being a paramedic?
So after I got my EMT, when I went to paramedic school, I went to Northeastern University. It was a one-year full-time program.
And following, you successfully completed that program, is that correct?
Yes.
And is there any sort of continuing educational component or recertification component in regard to your paramedic certification?
Yeah, every 2 years, paramedics have to recertify. We're required to get so many hours of continuing education to recertify every 2 years.
If I could turn your attention to the date of January 28th, 2022 into January 29th, 2022. Were you working with the Canton Fire Department on that day?
Yes.
And what kind of shift were you working on that occasion, if you recall?
It was a 24-hour shift.
And 24-hour shift within the Canton Fire Department is what to what?
It's 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. the next day.
Now, turning your attention to the 29th, at what point do you sort of get up and start to begin your day at the fire station?
So a normal day, sorry, was that my beginning of the shift you're talking about, or the end of the shift? Okay, so the second part of the shift. Normally we get up at 6 for the officers, but I got up a little earlier then because we had the snowstorm coming in. So I had to make sure everything was shoveled. I think I got up about maybe 5, check the apron of the area in front of the station, and make sure the walkways were clear. And
when you got up to check that, what, if anything, did you?
It had been snowing, and there was blizzard-type conditions coming in. So it was a decent level of snowfall there. Let me see, maybe 2-3 inches on the ground at that time.
And as far as with reference to that, what, if anything, did you do to?
I think we can move quickly through this part of it.
Yeah.
The cleaning the apron.
No, I wasn't getting to that.
Okay.
Okay.
As far as that particular date or that shift, how were you assigned within the firehouse?
I was lieutenant on Engine 4.
And with respect to that, at some point shortly after 6 a.m., did you receive a dispatch to a call?
Yes. Yeah, we were dispatched to a call for a person in the snow.
And did you respond to that call, sir?
Yes, I did.
And you were assigned to the engine, is that correct?
Correct.
Who, if anyone else, was assigned to the engine that day with you on that shift?
So we had Caden McLaughlin and Frank Walsh were my 2 engine crew.
And in addition to yourself and your engine, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatuses responded?
Ambulance 1 also responded with us. So that was Tony Flamati, Matt Kelly, and Tim Nuttall had also hopped on the ambulance. He was coming in for the shift in the morning, came in early to beat the storm. And
do you recall where the call was in regard to what the address was?
I don't remember the address offhand, but it was not that far away in the district.
And when you arrived in the engine, when you first arrived on scene, as you were arriving on scene, what, if anything, did you sort of see as upon your arrival?
So the police were already there. We were approaching the scene. I could see several people off to the side in the yard doing something, so we went to investigate that.
When you say off to the side, was that to your left, to your right, or something?
So the way I was approaching the street, it was on the left-hand side.
And when you indicate you see some group of people, is that correct?
Yeah, there was a few people around. I don't remember exactly how many or what they were doing.
And when you start to make your way over there, what if any, when you arrive on scene,
Yep.
what is sort of the first thing that you do?
So we went to evaluate the patient. I believe someone had started CPR prior to us getting there, so we went to continue that.
When you say someone had started CPR prior to you,
I don't remember the particular individual that was doing it as we arrived.
my only question, sir, so it's someone outside of your department, correct?
Yeah.
And do you know if it was one of the police officers or someone else?
I don't remember.
Now, obviously, you're dispatched in response to an unresponsive male, correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you're arriving on scene, you say you see sort of a cluster of people. Were you able to see that unresponsive male at that point?
Not in the vehicle, not until I exited the vehicle.
And at some point, much later or subsequently, did you come to learn the identity of the unresponsive male or the patient that you were involved in?
Afterwards, they told me yes. At the time, I did not know.
And what did you learn his name to be subsequently?
I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous and blanking right now.
Was it Mr. John O'Keefe?
Yes, correct.
And when you first came over to where Mr. O'Keefe was on the ground, is that correct?
Yes, he was.
What kind of position was his body in when you first observed?
He was lying supine on the ground, like on his back. He was parallel to the street, about 8 feet away from the snowbank.
And in reference to that, as far as the snow was concerned, what if any snow did you observe on or around where he was?
He was covered with snow, and there was snow around the area.
And so from a treatment of Mr. O'Keefe as a patient,
Yep.
what is sort of the first thing that you did or
We started CPR, or CCR, sorry, immediately. Someone went to go get a board to get him onto that so we can get him onto the stretcher and move him to the ambulance. And then someone else is trying to get the backstory, trying to figure out the scenario that we're dealing with.
If I could just stop you for a moment. So
Yep.
you mentioned CCR, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the difference between CCR versus CPR?
CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, so that is when you're helping someone breathe. CCR is when we first get to a scene. They changed the protocols a little while ago, so we don't have to give respirations right away. We can just do compressions. It's a little more effective to get the blood flowing quickly.
Thank you. As far as your involvement in patient care, sort of what
Yeah.
was that during that initial phase where Mr. O'Keefe is supine on the ground? What was your involvement in patient care at that point?
I was assisting with the CPR, making sure everyone else was doing their task. As lieutenant, I kind of got to manage the other people and make sure everyone's on target for what they're supposed to be doing.
And during that initial time that you're outside in the area where Mr. O'Keefe is on the ground, what, if any, observations did you make as far as injuries to Mr. O'Keefe at that time?
Outside on the ground, he was covered in snow, so we're really not doing any sort of secondary survey initially. The primary concern is the primary survey, which is airway, breathing, circulation. He was not breathing. He had no pulse, so our primary concern is to get that going.
And at some point, are you able to get him from the ground to the back of the ambulance?
Yeah, we moved him onto a longboard, then moved him from the longboard onto the stretcher, and brought the stretcher over to the ambulance and loaded him in there.
You mentioned at some point upon your sort of initial arrival at the patient that different people were tasked with different things, correct?
Yes.
And someone was tasked with trying to get sort of what you termed a backstory, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
So when you have someone unconscious, unresponsive, you want to know when they were last well, the last breathing, last seen, trying to figure out why someone is on the ground. There are different reasons of why they could be there, trying to figure that out. Normally people don't lay down in the snow, so trying to evaluate the reason the person was unconscious.
And so you're able to get him on, Mr. O'Keefe, onto a stretcher into the back of the ambulance, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And fair to say that the lighting in the back of the ambulance is better than it was outside?
correct.
And when you're in the back of the ambulance, are you able to then do or participate in that secondary survey you were
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah, we started doing a secondary survey after we started getting good compressions going. Someone was working on the intubation, and then one of the procedures is to strip off the clothes and evaluate the person.
And if you recall, how were the clothes removed?
I don't recall exactly which method they used. Typically, we cut them off, but I'm not sure if they did that or they just pulled them off.
And what, if anything, do you recall as to Mr. O'Keefe's clothing and sort of what he was wearing when he was found?
I really wasn't paying attention to it. The primary concern is trying to revive him.
So to that secondary survey, as far as once you're back in the ambulance, what, if anything, did you observe as far as injuries on Mr. O'Keefe at that?
He had a hematoma, or a bruising. The right eye was very prominent. There was some scratches on the right forearm. Was most of the external injuries we noted.
And now, in addition, so as far as people on scene, there were a number of different firefighters from your
Yes.
department. And you mentioned that the police were on scene when you arrived, is that correct?
Correct.
So beyond the police and fire, what, if any, other individuals did you observe at some point when you were on scene?
There was some other civilians there. I really wasn't paying attention to them.
Now, with reference to that backstory that you were talking about, at any point in time, either outside of the ambulance or inside of the ambulance, who, if anyone, was tasked by you or anyone else to try and obtain that backstory?
I think Katie McLaughlin was the one that obtained the backstory.
And if you know, was there any other conversation that you were present for between any of your other firefighters and any of those civilians?
That was primarily when she relayed to us the information that she had obtained. We were trying to figure out the scenario of why he was found unconscious, unresponsive.
Let me ask you this way. So as far as arrival at the patient when he's on the ground,
Yep.
who gets there first? You and the other individuals in the engine, or the firefighters in the ambulance?
We both respond from the same station at the same time. The engine's in the front, the ambulance usually in the rear. So I believe we pulled over, the ambulance pulled over at the same time as us. I believe C5 went as well, which is the captain. He was also responding with us.
Now, as far as the person that Firefighter McLaughlin spoke to, what, if anything, did you know about that person at that time?
At that time, I knew nothing. I knew that it was someone that had been with him. She relayed the information of what she had heard to us.
And the information that Firefighter McLaughlin, without reference to what it was, but the information that Firefighter McLaughlin was able to obtain, did she communicate that to you and the other firefighters in the ambulance?
Yes. Yeah, she came in the ambulance, told us what she had heard.
As far as the information that Firefighter McLaughlin provided, did that comport with what you were observing as far as injuries to Mr. O'Keefe?
Objection.
Sustained. You can lay a foundation if.
Now, as far as, again, the injuries that you observed to Mr. O'Keefe in the back of the ambulance were what?
It was the bruising of the right eye and the scratches on the forearm.
And what, if anything, did Firefighter McLaughlin indicate to you had been told to her?
That someone said she had hit him, and he was last seen.
Objection. Move to strike.
Sustained. That will be stricken.
May we approach on?
Okay. We always try and check and make sure that your lunch is here before we take a break. I'm told that it is. So we will take a lunch break. We'll see everybody here ready to start right at 2 o'clock.
Rise for the jury.
Police officers from across the state gathering today to say goodbye to fallen Billerica Police Sergeant Ian Taylor. Sergeant Taylor is being laid to rest. There was a massive procession from the funeral home on Pleasant Valley Street in Methuen to St. Patrick Parish on South Broadway in Lawrence. That's where Taylor's funeral is being held. He died 1 week ago when he was hit by an excavator while working a detail at a construction site. Now to your next weather forecast. Thick gray clouds in the sky this afternoon, but we should see some sun this weekend. We love to hear that. WBZ meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff is live for us at Gillette Stadium, where thousands of school kids have gathered for our Weather Education Day. Jacob, it looks like they're having a lot of fun there behind you.
I gotta say, Jordan, this is always one of the best days of the year, seeing all the excited kids' faces behind me. Kids, give me a good wave. Does anyone hear me? There we go. We got some friends out here. It was an amazing time at our Revs Weather Day, our next Weather Education Day. And unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of sunshine, but that didn't dampen the spirits at all. Temperatures have been holding steady in the 50s. Pretty much from start to finish for our next weather day here. We're at 52 in Worcester, 51 in Boston. We do have an onshore wind that is keeping us cool, and along with the cloud cover, we just have seen that kind of be very, very kind of persistent throughout the day today. Now, as we look ahead, we do have some breaks in the clouds arriving tomorrow. Our hour-by-hour forecast today hovers us in the upper 50s. to upper 40s by the time we get into the overnight. There's our futurecast showing the amount of sunshine we're going to see as we start out. We will see some sunshine to start the day, but unfortunately it's not going to be the best weekend overall. We'll have a full check of that part of the forecast coming up in just a few minutes. Jordan, back to you.
Jacob, we'll see you soon. Thanks. We're now seeing some of the damage left behind at a pro-Palestinian protest at Portland State University in Oregon. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti shows us the chaotic scene.
Protesters with makeshift armor ran from the Portland State University library into dozens of police surrounding the area as officers cleared out a days-long occupation Thursday. Outside, tense clashes as authorities threw protesters to the ground and arrested several. At one point, a car drove into a group who pelted it with objects before the driver sprayed something out the window and ran away. Cleanup is underway on UCLA's campus after chaos erupted early Thursday when officers in riot gear tore down the protester encampment.
They were shooting flash grenades over the heads of these students.
Associate Professor Graham Blair was among the 210 people arrested.
They violently threw protesters from inside the encampment to outside the encampment, and I saw bodies flying through the air. There's no other way to describe it.
In New York, newly released police body camera footage shows officers at Columbia University cutting their way through barricades after the school called in the NYPD to clear protesters from the campus. The NYPD tells CBS News that during that sweep, an officer accidentally fired their gun inside the hall Tuesday, but no one was injured.
When nonviolent protest is met with violent repression, it really does move public opinion and even voting behavior.
Omar Wasu has studied the impact of protests for about 20 years.
If the police use heavy-handed tactics, it sort of ignites a larger movement. At the same time, when protesters are perceived to use extreme tactics, that can lead to both disapproval and legitimize the more forceful response by the police.
And several universities say it is bad actors that are intentionally sparking the violence. Back here at UCLA, we do not know all of the identities of the 210 people that were arrested, but many of them were students and in some cases, faculty members. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Los Angeles.
The bowling alley in Maine, where a gunman carried out a mass shooting, reopened today. Just-in-time Recreation in Lewiston opened their doors this morning. There's a formal celebration there this afternoon. The owner says in the days following the shooting, it seemed unimaginable to open. But he says the community has been extremely supportive, calling the place home. The U.S. added 175,000 jobs last month, fewer than economists had expected. It's also the slowest growth that we've seen since October. The unemployment rate is slightly higher, now at 3.9%, but it's now been below 4% for 27 months in a row. Bruins fans are experiencing some uncovered deja vu with 3-1 series lead now gone, and the Bruins need to beat the Maple Leafs tomorrow night in Boston or the season is over. WBZ's Levin Reed shows us.
This is the second game in a row that the Bruins have looked like they weren't ready to start the game. In fact, Boston had one shot in the first period last night. It's going to be hard to score goals if you're not putting the puck on net. The Bees were once up 3-1 in this series. Now they are headed to a Game 7. Not much to see here in Game 6. The Bruins were down 1-0 after 2, and then in the third, it was William Nylander with a breakaway goal. His second goal of the game, Morgan Geekie, would get the Bruins on the board late, but wasn't even close to being enough. Bruins lose 2-1. Series tied at 3, Game 7. Right here in Boston tomorrow night, the Bees are embracing that winner or go home mentality.
It's an opportunity. We got to be grateful for it. And these are the moments you dream about as a kid. Game 7. It's where heroes are built and made. And I think we have to be excited about the position we're in and make the most of it.
Let's think positive here. The Bees have beaten the Leafs in Game 7s in 2018 and 2019. Let's add 2024 to the list. I'm Levin Reed for WBZ News.
Let's do it, Levin. Thanks. Coming up on WBZ News, one man accused of stealing thousands of dollars from Walmart customers, how he did it and how you can protect yourself.
You're watching WBZ News.
Investigators say one man used credit card skimmers to steal data from more than 27,000 cards and nearly 2,200 EBT cards. Police say last year, over the course of a week in July, Romario Serbin installed skimmers in Walmart stores all across the Northeast. Investigators say the skimmers were designed to look like normal credit card terminals, and Serbin would collect the data remotely.
So they're certainly going to go where there is a little more chaos in shopping. They can hide in plain sight. If you do notice that one terminal looks different than on the checkout aisles, that should be a red flag.
Experts say there are some simple steps to keep your account safe. First, change your bank PIN and passwords often and use two-step verification. They also recommend that you activate fraud alerts to help keep your account safe. More severe weather is expected today across Texas. Heavy rain caused dangerous flooding near Houston, and about 6 hours away in Hawley, Texas, residents are cleaning up after a tornado touched down there. At least 2 people were injured. And to our next weather here, it was a bit stormy last night. We have some gray clouds today. Fortunately, though, not a lot of storms, but not much sun either. Jacob, live for us at Gillette, where our Weather Education Day is happening. And Jacob, will we get to see any sun as we head into the weekend?
Yeah, we'll start to break out in a little bit of sun the later into the afternoon we go, but it's not going to be fully bright by any means. But you know what was bright today was our future. We got to talk to quite a few youngsters here at our Next Weather Education Day. Want to invite in our Next Weather team. Jason had to run off, but this is our team here. Eric, this is always a great day.
I don't want to say it was as big as when Messi came to town, but people were talking. There's a lot of excitement in the building today. The kids are awesome. They're always so curious and all amped up, and everyone's heading home having some lunch now. But it was great to talk about weather, and there's got to be a meteorologist or two in that crowd in the future.
Hope so, right? Alyssa, what was your favorite part about today?
I gotta say, just being at this iconic stadium and sharing it with all of you guys and meeting the kids. And I gotta tattle on us a little bit. The teachers kicked our butts in the soccer shootout, so that might have been my favorite part, actually.
I think, Lexi, you and I, we both missed.
Yep.
It was unfortunate.
I at least got it towards the goal, though.
She's calling me out.
I scored. Just Eric was
Eric held the team.
Yeah.
We need to work on it. I think we needed to warm up a little bit, but at least Eric held the team and got the goal. But
That's why he's chief. That's why he's chief, yeah.
Good for you.
Let's hop into the graphics and show you what we're dealing with today. We continue with some of that cool flow for the day today. We do have that sticking around through Sunday. The clouds are around at the moment. We will see a few breaks in the clouds. That's going to allow a little bit of sunshine as we go into the afternoon. Temperatures are in the 50s right now in Boston and Bedford, 52 in Worcester, 52 as you go out towards the Cape and Islands. And looking at our settling radar, you see that onshore wind really just holding some of that cool weather in place. It's not going to be the brightest of days, but still a pleasant day nonetheless. You see all that active weather out to our west, now streaming through the Great Lakes into the deep south. That's where we've seen quite a bit of busy, severe weather this season. Fortunately for us, we kind of avoided that. We did get some rumbles of thunder yesterday, but nothing severe. Watch as we go into Sunday. We do have the chance for some showers as you go later into the day Sunday. It's going to warm up a little bit as well. We'll be watching to see how that plays out for a soaking of rain. Today, upper 50s. As we go into the afternoon, perhaps a few breaks in the clouds, maybe even a nice sunset. Snap a picture, send it to Eric this evening. Tomorrow, we're back into the upper 50s, starting with some sunshine, and then we're back to some clouds the later into Sunday we go. It has been just a really rough pollen season, and that's going to continue as we go into the next few days too. Perhaps a little bit of improvements as you go into Monday. But you see Monday, there's another chance for showers before we clear out heading into Tuesday too. So looking at our 7-day forecast, we do have conditions looking like this. We're back into the upper 50s and low 60s. By the time we get into next week, that's where we're back into the 70s. I would argue the nicest time of the year as we go into next week, especially Monday and Tuesday. Perfect for maybe practicing some soccer. You guys, I know that I need it. I really was hoping that I could score on Brad. He's a former pro goalie here for the Revs, and he was a stone wall. It also helped that we just missed the goal. At least most of us did. But
yeah,
fun day, right?
It was a lot of fun, and the 70s sound pretty good. If only we had that today, but definitely a great day.
Awesome stuff. Jordan, we'll have to have you back next year. Back to you in the studio.
Yeah, Jacob, you know that I'm not very good at soccer myself, so we've all got our own talents. You guys keep us prepared in the weather department, so we'll cut you some slack. And coming up next year on WBZ News, this week's change maker, a school nurse who turned her own grief into a powerful program for middle school students. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, everyone. While May is Mental Health Awareness Month, many people work all year long to support emotional health in their community. Nurse Judy, a school nurse in Plymouth, is one of those people. She channeled her grief into a program that's built a community of caring kids and serves as a powerful tribute. WBZ's Lisa Hughes introduces us to this week's changemaker, Judy Duart.
They're so pretty. This bright garden is the sign of spring students at Plymouth Community Intermediate School have been waiting for.
The bulb that we planted last year creates another bulb. That's the one that's sprouting right now.
Those bulbs that spent months in cold ground emerge as a symbol of hope.
We always look at the tulips as part of a metaphor.
School nurse Judy Duart launched the Yellow Tulip Project here to help students talk about, prioritize, and destigmatize mental health care.
We can go through really difficult, dark times, but we need to hang in there because there are better days coming.
Spreading that message to young people was also a way to cope with her own grief. In early 2020, weeks before the pandemic, a dear friend's son, Matthew Roper, died by suicide at 17.
He was just an amazing, smart, vivacious, fun-loving boy, and probably the last kid I would think of as someone who would be struggling with any mental illness.
The Yellow Tulip Project is Judy's way of honoring Matthew's legacy of kindness while nurturing a growing group of kids who care.
it definitely gave me more hope.
8th grader Ace Madrigal lost her dad to suicide a year ago. A vocal mental health advocate, she describes her Yellow Tulip friends as a source of strength.
Having a group that was so aware of mental health and depression and self-harm and suicide and all that sort of stuff, it was so amazing just to be around people that got it.
The power of peer-to-peer support.
Being here, I've felt way more confident.
Isabella Ino Bianco joined the group as the new kid from California.
It was something that I could come into and have friends that could they could help me around the school if I needed help or lost, that I could go to them and they could always just help me.
Nurse Judy's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders want kids all over Plymouth to know they're not alone. In addition to the middle school gardens, they planted tulips at the public library, the hospital, and the elementary schools.
There'll just be kids walking by that every day at schools and then realizing like what it is, so then they'll have background knowledge on it.
And they can talk about it?
Yeah.
So what we want to do is make some posters so we can put them around the school.
Are you starting to see the stigma fade a bit?
Yes. Kids open up and they'll say, well, I have anxiety, or my brother has depression. The discussions that happen in our group stay in our group. So it's, private and respectful, but yet we have a lot of fun.
And not just during tulip season. They make holiday hope bags for kids with mental health issues in emergency rooms. They host a hope walk and make uplifting art for local businesses. The Yellow Tulip front and center.
We really want people to see this and know that we're here, people can talk. It's not just a bad thing.
4 years after Matthew Roper's death, Nurse Judy's plan for an after-school activity has blossomed into so much more.
I'm so proud of her, and I'm so incredibly deeply touched.
Kristen Roper is Matthew's mom.
It gives me a little bit of fuel that we're doing something good here.
She says her adventurous, loving, athletic son wanted to beat depression so he could help others.
I love that picture. I love that picture. This was his last birthday, the kid's just being goofy.
Through Matthew's crew, the family's mental health charity, and the Yellow Tulip Project, that mission lives on.
A permanent solution to a temporary problem isn't the right decision. During the wonderful times, enjoy the beauty of it and share it with your family and your friends and thank God for that moment. And when it's difficult, know that that's temporary.
Both Kristen and Judy say giving kids tools to care for themselves and one another is critically important. And so is showing them by example that there is no shame in talking about mental health. Lisa Hughes, WBZ News.
Wow, and so great for these kids to have a safe space. Is there someone in your community that you know that's making a difference? Let us know for our Changemaker series. We're looking for people who are innovating, solving problems, and closing opportunity gaps. You can send us an email to changemakers@wbz.com. And coming up, it seems humans aren't the only ones who know that some plants can be used as medicine. Those details right after this. Scientists say they've just witnessed a medical breakthrough involving apes in the wild. Researchers in Indonesia say in 2022 they watched as an orangutan chewed up leaves from a plant and then used his fingers to put the juice from that plant on a wound on its cheek. Across Southeast Asia, people commonly use that same plant to treat pain and inflammation, but this is the first time that scientists ever observed a wild great ape do the same.
It's possible that there exists like a common underlying mechanism for the recognition and also application of substances with medical or functional properties to wounds. And it's also possible that our last common ancestor already showed similar ointment behavior.
Wow, the ape's wound closed without any problems within a month. Pretty incredible stuff. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News Boston and WBZ. The news continues streaming on CBS News Boston. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Right now on CBS News Boston, jurors in the Karen Reed case returning to the courtroom after visiting the scene of the crime where Boston police officer John O'Keefe died. And a final salute to a fallen Billerica police officer killed in the line of duty. Plus, the state announces a new plan in response to Steward Health's financial issues. Those details straight ahead.
You're watching WBZ News.
Well, day 4 of the Karen Reed trial now underway. It's been a busy day for the jury. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jordan Jagalinzer. They started the day with testimony from a Canton firefighter, where the defense tried to discredit her testimony from the day before.
Write it in any report?
No.
You didn't write it in any notes?
No. Respectfully, I think my testimony has been pretty consistent.
So do you know Caitlin Albert?
I do.
You're friends with Caitlin Albert?
I would say more acquaintances, not close friends.
After her testimony, the jurors left the courtroom for a tour of the Canton Road where Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found dead more than 2 years ago now. They returned back to the courtroom after visiting that scene and heard from another first responder, a Canton firefighter, who also responded to that crime scene that the day Officer O'Keefe was found. He will continue his testimony when jurors return to the courtroom later this afternoon. We'll carry that live right here on CBS News Boston, on Pluto TV, and at WBZ.com. Police officers from across the state gathering today to say goodbye to fallen Billerica Police Sergeant Ian Taylor. Sergeant Taylor is being laid to rest. There was a massive procession from the funeral home on Pleasant Valley Street in Methuen to St. Patrick Parish on South Broadway in Lawrence. That's where Taylor's funeral is being held. He died a week ago when he was hit by an excavator while working a detail at a construction site. And And taking a look outside at the city, you can see maybe some breaks in the cloud there. A bit of a gray start to our Friday, but you might see some peaks of sunshine. Let's send things over to meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff.
I'm here at Gillette Stadium, one of our favorite days of the year for the Next Weather team, where we invite a couple thousand youngsters from around New England to really just come experience weather, space, all kinds of different science topics here. And such a great setting too. Unfortunately, we had some cloud cover, but that didn't really dampen the spirits and the energy of the youngsters and the other Next Weather team members here. We do have temperatures this afternoon that are in the 50s. We're at 51 in Boston as we look at our graphics, 52 in Worcester, and 54 degrees in Bedford. Our wind is coming off the ocean, and that is keeping us on the cool side, along with, of course, the cloud cover that's in place. We do have some clouds that will try to break up as you go later into the
Worcester police are investigating a stabbing. It occurred yesterday in the area of Chandler Street. Officers were flagged down by someone around 3:30 in the afternoon and located the stabbing victim on the sidewalk. The victim was taken to an area hospital for treatment. We do not know their condition at this time. Police are investigating the theft of 4 new iPhones that were delivered to a home in Reading earlier this week. Police now need your help identifying the suspect on your screen. Take a look. The phones were delivered by FedEx to a home on High Street Wednesday afternoon. Investigators say the suspect arrived in a dark blue SUV, possibly a Toyota. You can see it there, and took the delivery package. If you recognize the suspect or this car, you're asked to call police. Well, police in New Bedford made a huge drug seizure, taking 17 kilos of cocaine off the street. It happened Wednesday. Officers conducted a bust at an apartment on Farm Street and arrested 31-year-old Gilberto Collazo. He now faces several charges, including trafficking in excess, and could spend up to 20 years in prison. The DA says this may be the single largest seizure of drugs in New Bedford's history. Police are asking for your help in their investigation into an apparent hoax device that was left on this bridge in Templeton. The device was found around 7:40 yesterday morning on the Route 202 bridge near the Elm Street intersection. Police say the device has wires around it the same way that an explosive would. If you were in that area and saw anything, call Templeton Police. Well, this is what's left of a car after it burst into flames on 95 in Westboro overnight after crashing. Fire officials say the driver was injured. They were taken to the hospital for treatment, but we do not know their condition at this time. A driver may face charges after 2 bicyclists were hit in Taunton, one of them killed. The bicyclists were on North Walker Street in Taunton yesterday when they were hit. The DA's office says the driver is a 62-year-old man from Mansfield who did not appear to be intoxicated. The bicyclist who was killed is Donald McManus, a 76-year-old from Seekonk. The other cyclist, a 72-year-old from Attleboro, suffered significant injuries. Neighbors say the area is very dangerous.
2 kids, and I wouldn't let them walk down the street. I just wouldn't, because of the speed that they travel.
The driver was cited for motor vehicle homicide by negligent operation, but a clerk magistrate will decide if there's enough evidence for a criminal charge. State officials launched an emergency operations plan today in response to Steward Health's financial issues. The group owns 9 Massachusetts hospitals, and its financial records have been under review by state leaders since February. We're told the emergency plan allows for more clear communication between the state, healthcare providers, and investors to make sure that patients are getting quality care through any future transitions. Governor Maura Healey has been outspoken with criticisms of Steward, pushing for the Texas-based company to leave Massachusetts. Right now, all Steward's local hospitals are open and operational. Now to an I-team investigation following the money the state is spending on the migrant crisis. The cost now approaching $1 billion. The I-team was first to uncover a $10 million no-bid contract for a catering company, and the hotel group's collecting millions for housing and food contracts. WBZ Chief Investigator Cheryl Fiandaca has been digging into the contracts and discovered there appears to be little to no state oversight of the vendors who are collecting tens of millions in taxpayer money.
Honestly, there's nothing edible.
Here are some of the dinners that taxpayers paid $21 for. Spaghetti with hot dogs and rice with one chicken drumstick.
The spaghetti with the hot dog in it. Really? We're paying $21 for that. Okay. It's crazy.
These lunches and dinners were given to migrants and homeless families at the Fairfield Inn, Dedham, Boston. The contract obtained by the I-Team shows the state is paying this one hotel $7,343,316 for food, with no provision or requirement that the meals be nutritious or meet USDA recommendations, leaving it up to the hotel to decide what to serve.
When you hire a vendor like that, you need guidelines. So you really should have some oversight of the quality of the meals that are being served.
But the contract does not have any oversight provisions for the food, nor does it give the state the right to inspect the meals, meaning the state is paying vendors millions without knowing what it's getting for its money.
I don't think that we could have really foreseen just how horribly this is being managed. When you look at those meals, and when you look at the cost of the hotels, it doesn't take a lot of negotiation to make these contracts better.
The Fairfield Inn is part of Gary Hotel Management. 9 of its hotels have state contracts, and by the end of the year, will collect $24,319,212 for the meals it's providing.
And it's just wasted money going down the drain.
Ashish Sagani lists himself as the owner of Gary Hotels on LinkedIn. Sagani lives in this sprawling home on the water. He declined our request for an on-camera interview. Instead, through a spokesperson, provided this statement. We were specifically asked by the state to provide more cultural foods that were familiar to the majority of our residents. Beans, rice, vegetables, and meats, such as chicken, pork, goat, and fish. We will remain mindful of our residents' dietary needs moving forward as they become more familiarized with American foods.
So somebody's dropped the ball on this and dropped it in a big way.
Who do you think is responsible for that?
Well, I think it falls on the shoulders of the governor. The executive branch is responsible for these contracts, and the buck stops there.
The state previously told us it only conducts site visits of the hotels if they have complaints. So we asked for those records more than a month ago, but so far the state has failed to provide them. Cheryl Fiandaca, WBZ News.
And coming up after the break on CBS News Boston, here we go again with the Bruins, set for another Game 7 Saturday night. A look at their history in winner-takes-all games coming up next in sports. Welcome back, everyone. Taking a look outside at the Zachem in the city, you can see it looks like the sun is doing everything it can to try and peek out. Let's get a check of our forecast as we head into the weekend with meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff.
I'm here at Gillette Stadium for our Next Weather Education Day, one of our favorite days every year. We invite thousands of kids from around New England to all come to Gillette Stadium. They get to learn about science, weather, space. It's really an amazing day. even though we had the clouds, it really was a bright future for us with all the kids in the stands behind me. They really just brought the energy. Now, looking ahead as we look at our weather graphics, we're sticking with that cool flow for the next few days. In fact, sticking around today, tomorrow, and right on into Sunday. Now, as we go into next week, late Sunday and into Monday, we will see some showers developing. Sunday, definitely the more unsettled of the weekend days. And we see some warming temperatures as we head into early next week. But that's what you see outside your door right now. The cloud cover is definitely persistent. I did see maybe a couple hints of blue skies, but definitely not right now. We will see that arriving a little bit later. 51 in Boston, mid to low 50s elsewhere. We're on our way to the upper 50s for highs in a lot of spots, but that onshore wind, it's that time of the year that the sea breeze is definitely very persistent. We've had a very busy storm season through the Great Lakes and Midwest, Ohio River Valley to the Deep South. And we saw that yesterday through parts of the Deep South. For us, we got a couple booms of rumbles of thunder. Nothing severe, but definitely starting to kind of plant the seed that it's that time of the year for us as well, with severe season kind of right around the corner. Now, we wake up with some sunshine on Saturday. We go to clouds, and then this is what arrives heading into Sunday. The second half of Sunday will definitely be pretty soggy. That's going to stick around right on into Monday, but notice that southerly flow. That's going to allow our temperatures heading into Monday to get back into the 70s. So our hour-by-hour forecast today, upper 50s, some late breaks in the clouds. We're back into the 50s for tomorrow to near 60 degrees, starting out with some sunshine. We're back to some clouds later, and then Sunday is when we really start to see some of the rain moving into the area. I'm going to drop those pollen counts heading into Monday because of the rain that arrives Sunday into Monday, but allergy sufferers, this is the worst time of year for you. So I empathize with you. Don't worry, there is hope on the horizon. We get that chance of rain Sunday into Monday and another chance of rain for the second half of Wednesday. Wednesday looks to be pretty soggy too. Once again, there are our rain chances. Saturday and Tuesday will be the driest days as we look ahead. And looking at our 7-day forecast, I promise you warmth for the first half of next week. Monday and Tuesday, we're back into the middle 70s, upper 60s for Wednesday and Thursday, but we do have the chance for some showers. So back here at Gillette Stadium, like I said, the clouds were around. We were hoping for maybe a little bit more sunshine, but don't worry, those kiddos, they brought the energy. Even the Patriots cheerleaders, they let us in a couple of stretches to keep our warmth up. It was a great time, and we'll look forward to it again next year. That's what's happening here at Gillette Stadium. Back to you in the studio.
Jacob, thanks. It's happened again. Bruins fans, after going up 3-1 on the Maple Leafs in their first round playoff series, the Bruins have now lost 2 straight, setting up a win or stay home game 7 Saturday night at TD Garden. The Bruins had nothing in Toronto on Thursday night, but will hopefully wake up in time for Saturday. The Bruins offense couldn't get going for the second straight game, scoreless late in the second period. Toronto's William Nylander finally gets the Leafs on the board. The fans there were going wild. Toronto led at 1-0 after 2 periods, still 1-0 with under 3 minutes to play. Nylander gets a breakaway and beats Jeremy Swayman for the huge insurance goal. Oh, the Bruins didn't score until there was less than a second on the clock. Leafs win it 2-1, and now the series comes down to Game 7 Saturday night.
They're obviously very desperate, fighting for their lives, so that's always the toughest game to get. You know, we know that. You know, but there's some. I thought tonight was better than last game. You know, and then they had a few power plays that we were able to go off and get some momentum back. So, but you know, at the end of the day, none of that matters now. You know, we have to regroup and get excited for the next one. You know, someone told us at the start of the season that would be Game 7 at home against Toronto. We'd take that all day. So, it doesn't matter how you get there. We're there. Yeah, for sure.
We had plenty of opportunity to score. We need way more. You know, it's definitely not good enough a job of you know, forward group, and including myself, obviously, starting with me, scoring goals. You know, I said we got 1 goal in 2 games, so we need to be much better and create more offense.
If this feels familiar, it's because we've been here before. Saturday night will be the 30th Game 7 for the Bruins in franchise history, which is the most for any NFL team, or NHL team, rather. The Leafs are second with 26. The Bees are an even 15-15 in their previous Game 7s. Those 15 wins are tied for the most with Montreal At least the Bruins are 4-1 against the Leafs in Game 7 showdowns, so we've got that going for us. Last night was Jack Edwards' final game calling the Bruins after 19 seasons with NESN. Game 7 is an exclusive national broadcast, so Jack called his last game in Toronto. Congrats on a great career, Jack. What a run. Life much better for the Boston Celtics, who are patiently waiting for their second round opponent to surface. It'll either be the Cavs or the Magic. If Cleveland wins tonight's Game 6 in Orlando, Game 1 of Celtics-Cavs will be Sunday at the Garden. If Orlando takes it to Game 7, the Celtics will start on Tuesday instead. While the Bruins and Celtics are both home in Boston, the Red Sox are hitting the road after going 4-2 on their 6-game homestand. The Sox are in Minnesota tonight to start a 3-game set with the Twins. It's the start of a 5-game road trip that will also bring Boston to Atlanta next week. If you've got a hankering for some football after the NFL draft, be sure to catch Patriots All Access coming up tonight at 7 on WBZ. We'll take you behind the scenes for Drake May's first visit to Boston.
Let's go, come on.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. This is an exciting moment for us, and we really were happy to be able to wind up where we did with you. And there's nothing more important to our family than winning football games. And we want to keep it going, and we hope you become a big part of it.
This is the TD Garden crowd cheering for 7-year-old Max Angel from Malden. He was honored at the Celtics Game 5 Wednesday night as a hero among us. Max's quick thinking helped save his pregnant first-grade teacher. When she passed out in class earlier this year, we're told the little boy jumped into action, grabbed a hall pass, and rushed to the nurse's office for help. His teacher and the baby are doing well. Still ahead on CBS News Boston, getting in the spring spirit, how your dog can join in on the fun for Cinco de Mayo and this week's to-do list. Well, May is here and there's plenty to do this weekend, including Cinco de Mayo celebrations. Here's this weekend's to-do list. We made it to May, get in the spring spirit with a community day happening in Brookline. Music and food take over Halls Pond Sanctuary for their Spring Community Day. Sunday, families can get in on the action with children's activities like storytelling, seed planting, a bird walk, and even a scavenger hunt. Don't miss it from 11 to 2. Grab the kids and help inspire them to love math on Sunday with a math jubilee in Framingham. Happening right on the city's historic common, there will be entertaining activities to help children explore the world of math with puzzles, games, illusions, and more. The event goes from 11 to 3. Get the pups in on the Cinco de Mayo fun with a special event Sunday at Park 9 in Everett with taco specialties from local eateries and drinks safe for your pet too. It's a day where you can enjoy authentic Mexican flavor without feeling bad leaving your furry friend home. The celebrations take place from 11 to 9. Well, thanks for streaming CBS News Boston. I'm Jordan Jagelins. Are today's top stories, and your weather are straight ahead. Police officers from across the state gathering today to say goodbye to fallen Billerica Police Sergeant Ian Taylor. Sergeant Taylor is being laid to rest. There was a massive procession from the funeral home on Pleasant Valley Street in Methuen to St. Patrick Parish on South Broadway in Lawrence. That's where Taylor's funeral is being held. He died 1 week ago when he was hit by an excavator while working a detail at a construction site. Now to your next weather forecast. Thick gray clouds in the sky this afternoon, but we should see some sun this weekend. We love to hear that. WBZ meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff is live for us at Gillette Stadium, where thousands of school kids have gathered for our Weather Education Day. Jacob, it looks like they're having a lot of fun there behind you.
I gotta say, Jordan, this is always one of the best days of the year, seeing all the excited kids' faces behind me. Kids, give me a good wave. Does anyone hear me? There we go. We got some friends out here. It was an amazing time at our Revs Weather Day, our next Weather Education Day. And unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of sunshine, but that didn't dampen the spirits at all. Temperatures have been holding steady in the 50s. Pretty much from start to finish for our next weather day here. We're at 52 in Worcester, 51 in Boston. We do have an onshore wind that is keeping us cool, and along with the cloud cover, we just have seen that kind of be very, very kind of persistent throughout the day today. Now, as we look ahead, we do have some breaks in the clouds arriving tomorrow. Our hour-by-hour forecast today hovers us in the upper 50s to upper 40s by the time we get into the overnight. There's our futurecast showing the amount of sunshine we're going to see as we start out. We will see some sunshine to start the day, but unfortunately it's not going to be the best weekend overall. We'll have a full check of that part of the forecast coming up in just a few minutes. Jordan, back to you.
Jacob, we'll see you soon. Thanks. We're now seeing some of the damage left behind at a pro-Palestinian protest at Portland State University in Oregon. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti shows us the chaotic scene.
Protesters with makeshift armor ran from the Portland State University library into dozens of police surrounding the area as officers cleared out a days-long occupation Thursday. Outside, tense clashes as authorities threw protesters to the ground and arrested several. At one point, a car drove into a group who pelted it with objects before the driver sprayed something out the window and ran away. Cleanup is underway on UCLA's campus after chaos erupted early Thursday when officers in riot gear tore down the protester encampment.
They were shooting flash grenades over the heads of these students.
Associate Professor Graham Blair was among the 210 people arrested.
They violently threw protesters from inside the encampment to outside the encampment, and I saw bodies flying through the air. There's no other way to describe it.
In New York, newly released police body camera footage shows officers at Columbia University cutting their way through barricades after the school called in the NYPD to clear protesters from the campus. The NYPD tells CBS News that during that sweep, an officer accidentally fired their gun inside the hall Tuesday, but no one was injured.
When nonviolent protest is met with violent repression, it really does move public opinion and even voting behavior.
Omar Wasu has studied the impact of protests for about 20 years.
If the police use heavy-handed tactics, it sort of ignites a larger movement. At the same time, when protesters are perceived to use extreme tactics, that can lead to both disapproval and legitimize the more forceful response by the police.
And several universities say it is bad actors that are intentionally sparking the violence. Back here at UCLA, we do not know all of the identities of the 210 people that were arrested, but many of them were students and in some cases, faculty members. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Los Angeles.
The bowling alley in Maine, where a gunman carried out a mass shooting, reopened today. Just-in-Time Recreation in Lewiston opened their doors this morning. There's a formal celebration there this afternoon. The owner says in the days following the shooting, it seemed unimaginable to open. But he says the community has been extremely supportive, calling the place home. The U.S. added 175,000 jobs last month, fewer than economists had expected. It's also the slowest growth that we've seen since October. The unemployment rate is slightly higher, now at 3.9%, but it's now been below 4% for 27 months in a row. Bruins fans are experiencing some uncovered deja vu. A 3-1 series lead now gone, and the Bruins need to beat the Maple Leafs tomorrow night in Boston, or the season is over. WBZ's Levin Reed shows us.
This is the second game in a row that the Bruins have looked like they weren't ready to start the game. In fact, Boston had one shot in the first period last night. It's going to be hard to score goals if you're not putting the puck on net. The Bees were once up 3-1 in this series. Now they are headed to a Game 7. Not much to see here in Game 6. The Bruins were down 1-0 after 2. And then in the third, it was William Nylander with a breakaway goal. His second goal of the game, Morgan Geekie, would get the Bruins on the board late, but wasn't even close to being enough. Bruins lose 2-1. Series tied at 3, Game 7. Right here in Boston tomorrow night, the Bees are embracing that winner-go-home mentality.
It's an opportunity. We got to be grateful for it. And these are the moments you dream about as a kid. Game 7. It's where heroes are built and made. And I think we have to be excited about the position we're in and make the most of it.
Let's think positive here. The Bees have beaten the Leafs in Game 7s in 2018 and 2019. Let's add 2024 to the list. I'm Levin Reed for WBZ News.
Let's do it, Levin. Thanks. Coming up on WBZ News, one man accused of stealing thousands of dollars from Walmart customers, how he did it and how you can protect yourself.
Turning your attention back to the treatment of Mr. O'Keefe in the back of the ambulance, okay?
Yes.
With respect to that, you testified that you don't recall sort of specifically anything as far as clothing for Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
I was not paying attention to the clothing.
And so to that point, what were you paying attention to at that point?
Primarily the big issue was doing the CCR, then to CPR. We're trying to resuscitate the person as best we can. We know with the hypothermic patient, it's very difficult. It's a longer treatment protocol than a typical cardiac arrest because we have to do the CPR for an extended period of time. We have to get the patient warmed up. So the clothing is just quickly removed versus examined or looked at. And the focus was on getting compressions done. Someone was trying to intubate, getting a line started. So that's what we're mainly focused on.
And as far as treatment is concerned, what, if any, sort of interplay or intersection is there between a cardiac arrest and a hypothermic patient?
When someone's hypothermic and in a cardiac arrest, we can't declare them dead or passed on until they've been warmed up. A lot of times with hypothermic patients, they can appear to be dead when they're still actually alive. So there has been instances where people have woken up in morgues that were hypothermic when their body warmed up a little bit. So we have to be very cautious, very careful about treating them as much as we can, as careful as we can. We can't shake them too much, can't move them too much. So it's getting the blood circulating and then starting ventilating after a few minutes.
Back to the CCR, the chest compression that we're talking about. What, if any, sort of, based on your training and experience, what, if any, sort of protocols are Well, let me ask you this. Were you doing chest compressions throughout the entirety of this interaction with the patient?
No, chest compressions, most people do it for about 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, it's very tiring to do chest compressions, so we swap off every few minutes. So a different person will come in and do the compressions. They'll do it for a little while, go into a different task. Someone else will come in and do compressions.
Is that sort of the protocol that you followed in this instance with
Yes.
regard to the stroke?
Yes, we were rotating the person doing compressions.
And the ambulance at some point leaves the scene and goes to a hospital, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you know what hospital, Mr.
Good Samaritan Medical Center.
If you could just wait till.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
Question is.
Yeah. Good Samaritan Medical Center.
And did you go along for that ambulance ride?
No, I did not.
And where did you go?
So as the lieutenant on the engine, I stayed with the engine. I detailed my 2 other engine personnel to the ambulance. So they went with the 2 engine personnel, the 2 regular people on the ambulance, as well as an additional person. Timmy Nuttall was the extra person for that one.
And so you take the engine and go with it?
I went back to the station.
And at some point shortly after that, are you called back to the roadway of Fairview Road?
Yes.
And same general area of Fairview Road?
Yes, same address.
And how is it that you get from the station back to Fairview?
So we had struck a box to cover the personnel that we had detailed. That means we send out a page looking for additional people to come in. We had Sam Pock come in. So he was my engine driver, and I was in the lieutenant's seat. We responded back in engine 4.
And the ambulance that had been there on Fairview Road with you previously was at Good Samaritan?
Yes. Correct? Yeah, a call like that takes an extended period of time, even at the hospital, to assist them there. So we had to get an ambulance from Station 2.
And if you know who was on that?
Becker and Dan Whitley.
Now, with reference to this particular call, what, if anything, was this secondary dispatch with regard to?
So this call was for a Section 12, which is someone in having a psychological issue.
And do you know who that Section 12 was in regard to?
Yeah, this was for Karen Reed.
And at some point, you go back to the scene along with the engine and the second ambulance from Station 2?
Yeah, so the engine got there first. The ambulance coming from another station, so it was a couple extra minutes before they got there.
And when you arrived, who, if anyone else, is sort of on scene on Fairview Road at that point?
The police were still on scene. They had never left. So initially it was me, Sam Pock, and the police. So I went up to try to get the backstory of why we're doing a Section 12 and what was going on.
And at some point, well, when you first arrived, without regard to what was said to you, but who, if anyone, do you speak with to sort of try to gain this information or backstory?
When I got onto the scene, I talked to the police that was there.
Who did you talk to, sir? The police officer who was there?
Police officer, yes. Sorry.
And do you recall specifically who that police officer was?
I really did not pay attention to the individual officer.
And at some point, do you have a conversation, or what, if any, conversation do you have with the patient, in this case, the defendant, Ms. Reed?
So it was when we identified Karen Reed as the patient, the ambulance arrived shortly after. We started talking to her and trying to get her into the ambulance to talk to her further.
And just to be clear for the records, when you say Ms. Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, she's right over there.
Does that record reflect identification of the defendant by the witness?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, with respect to the defendant, Ms. Reed, where is she sort of when you first make contact with her on scene when you come back?
In the general vicinity of where the police cars are.
And what is sort of the purpose of this initial conversation that you're having with Ms. Reed?
For a Section 12, that's when someone's made threats to harm themselves or others. So I just had to judge her mental ability at the time, and if she was a threat to us, and how much of a threat she was to herself. So just a quick evaluation, see how her behavior was.
And what, if any, observations did you make of her during your quick conversation?
She appeared very distraught, very upset. Initially just trying to explain the situation to her about going to the hospital with the Section 12, and she was resistant to that.
And so when you say she was resistant to that, what if anything, did she say or do to?
Well, she did not want to go.
Hold on. You cannot talk over each other. The objection's overruled.
Yeah. Okay.
Please go ahead, sir.
So what was the question again, please? Yeah.
So what, if anything, when you say she was resistant, what, if anything, did she communicate to you, or observations did you make in regard to that?
She did not want to go to the hospital, and she didn't think she needed any assistance.
And what, if anything, are you sort of, you mentioned you were explaining sort of the process to her. What, if anything, are you saying in that explanation?
Well, once Section 12 gets written, it's written by the police. Once it's written, we are required to transport to the hospital. Section 12 means that they believe you're a threat to yourself or others, so you have to get evaluated at the hospital by the hospital staff there to see how mentally stable you are.
Now, at this time of this conversation, what, if anything, did you know as far as the relationship between Ms. Reed and the prior patient, Mr. O'Keefe?
I knew they had a relationship. I wasn't sure if they were married or engaged or what their status was, but I knew she was did have a strong relationship with him.
And in reference to Mr. O'Keefe, during your conversation with Ms. Reed, what, if anything, was she asking or saying in reference to Mr. O'Keefe?
She kept repeating, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She seemed very concerned about that. We're trying to explain to her that we cannot declare him dead. He's being evaluated. He's being treated. They're trying to treat him the best they can.
And as far as when she's stating these things to you, is this, as far as the sort of tonality of her voice while she's saying these things to you, can you describe that?
She was very up and down. It was a repetitive conversation with her. She's obviously experiencing a lot of different emotions, so her emotional state was all over the place.
And as far as this sort of second time that you're on scene, about how long period of time are we talking about?
That was about between 15 and 20 minutes.
And as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed, where did she go? Did you stay with her sort of the entire time that she was on scene that second time? Or?
Because she was resistant, we were trying to get her to voluntarily go. If someone voluntarily goes, even with the section written, they're released a lot quicker. So we're trying to convince her to go, be willing to go with us versus being forced. If at some point we have to actually force her to go against her will, then it's going to be a much longer hospital stay. So our main goal with staying on the scene so long was to try to get her willingly to go. Just makes her experience much better.
And just to be clear, when you say we, who specifically are you from?
It was me, Dan Whitley, Jason Becker were the ones talking to her in the back of the ambulance.
When you clear, sort of when you leave the scene, where is Ms. Reed at that point?
So the ambulance transported her to the Good Samaritan. We also detailed Sam Pock as the driver.
So the gentleman who had driven, or the firefighter that had driven you in the engine to the scene that
Yep.
drives the ambulance away?
Yes, correct.
Would you say his name again, please?
Sam Pock.
Sam what?
Sam Pock.
Spell it, please, the last name?
P-O-C-H is the last name.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay. Ready?
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Woodbury, you and I have never met or spoken, correct?
No.
I know you had said you were nervous, so I'm going to try and make this fairly brief,
Thank you.
sir. I just have a couple of areas that I'd like to go through with. So your interaction with Karen Reed and what you actually heard from her mouth. That's sort of where I want to concentrate, as opposed to anything that anybody else may have said to you about what they believe she might have said, okay?
Okay.
And it seems to me that your main interaction with her was not when the initial call came in to respond to, a man who was unresponsive in the snow. It was after you went back to the station in the engine and then came back to the scene for the purposes of the Section 12 that you described. Would that be fair to say? And when you came back to the scene for the Section 12, it's also fair to say that the Section 12 issue was your focus, correct?
Correct.
You had an order in hand, correct?
The police had it, and they gave it to us when we got there.
Right. Okay. So you got an order in hand once you got there.
Correct.
Which is what you expected to happen, correct?
Yes.
And your focus at that point is, okay, and I don't want to be too, flip, but we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Is that a fair characterization?
That is one way to put it.
And you wanted to do it the easy way.
Yes, correct.
And you wanted to persuade Karen Reed that she should want to do it the easy way, correct?
Yes.
And after some conversation back and forth where she was initially resistant, she eventually agreed, yes, I'll do, not to put words in your mouth or hers, but to the effect of, yes, we'll do this the easy way, correct?
Did get her to agree to transport.
All right. And with regard to her state of mind, I believe you had testified that she appeared to be very distraught.
Yes, correct.
Going through a lot of emotions.
Yes.
Grief-stricken.
Oh, that's one of them, yes.
Hysterical at times.
Yes.
Raising her voice at times.
Yes.
Crying at times.
I didn't see any actual tears, but that type of emotional display.
All right. And so in terms of the only commentary that you heard with regard to her feelings or questions regarding John O'Keefe, it was the statements that you heard repetitively over and over and over again. Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
That was some of the things she was saying, yes.
Your Honor, may we approach sidebar briefly?
Okay. So I think, Ms. Tianetti, I think you need the actual.
Yes. I was going to ask a couple of questions first and then grab it.
But it's right there for when you need it.
Lieutenant Woodbury, on your direct examination, you testified a bit, and I don't want to block a juror here, I'm sorry. You testified a bit about the injuries that you observed on John O'Keefe when you first arrived at the scene, correct?
Yes.
You testified about the swollen eye?
Yes.
And you also testified about the scratch marks that you saw on his forearm, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to show you, I'm going to approach in a minute, to show you what has been marked M for identification. And when I hand it to you, please keep it to yourself and look at it, and then look up at me when you're done, okay? Having reviewed M for identification, do you recognize what that depicts?
Yes.
What does it depict?
That is Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
All right. Does that photograph appear to be a fair and accurate representation of the scratch marks that you observed on January 29th of 2022, sir?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Okay. That will be our next exhibit, and again, we'll have to maybe renumber. Counsel, before you leave today, we have to figure out how to keep everything straight.
Understood. And with the court's permission, Your Honor, may I have that published on the screen for the jury?
Yes.
Now, on direct examination, Lieutenant, hang on. Let me just have a moment. Oh, good point. I'm going to try to get out of your way so everybody can see. With regard to the injuries that you described on direct examination, Lieutenant, I believe you would mainly concentrate.
I'm sorry, I need to, please take this down for me. I need to counsel it.
Mr. Yannetti, you're all set to put it back up on the screen. Do you have any other questions that you can move on to, Mr. Yannetti? I'd like to refer to the photo you asked. I don't have many questions left, but I did want to. Okay. All right. If this is the only area of inquiry, Jules, why don't we take a 5-minute recess? You are muted. See counsel at sidebar and make use of this time, please.
This court is in session. Please be seated.
So jurors, I can assure you that by Monday, I mean, we're in really good shape. It's an organizational situation that I have to deal with. So we've been dealing with that. We appreciate your patience, and we are in good shape. And Ms. Gianetti, if you need the exhibit, it's here.
Terrific. May I have it published again on the camera?
Yes.
Now, Lieutenant, with regard to the injuries that you observed, did you notice any lividity on the body when you were looking at John O'Keefe?
Being hypothermic, he was very pale overall, so the skin wasn't pinked up yet. So it's hard to really judge the rest of the skin that way until it's warmed up and much later into the scene.
You are familiar with the term lividity, though?
Yes.
Could you just explain that for the jury?
That's like bruising. So the pooling of blood in lower sections. So for like a cardiac arrest patient, when they have lividity, it looks like bruising on the underside where all the blood has pooled. And we did not really notice that.
But it's not actually bruising from an injury, it's just the blood being
settling down. It's the same thing, yes.
One at a time, please.
Yep, sorry. It appears like bruising, and bruising is basically pooling of blood under the skin. So lividity is just gravity-fed pooling of blood under the skin. And it usually happens what is the section of the body that is lowest.
I see, okay. Now, with regard to the scratches that you've testified about and that you now observe on Exhibit 382, I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your testimony on direct examination was that you observed them in the forearm area, correct?
It was the right, like forearm to arm. I was trying to signal like right up here, but yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
It wasn't just on the
not just, it was the arm area. You know, mostly what I noticed was the forearm, but there was some around there.
Okay, so it wasn't just below the elbow?
It wasn't up just below the elbow.
There was some above the elbow as well?
Yep.
That's consistent with Exhibit 382?
Correct.
I'm going to just have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
No further questions.
Mr. Lally, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Lieutenant, thank you very much. So you're all set. Your next witness, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth would call Mr. Daniel Whitley to the stand.
Watch your step. Court, and raise your right hand, please.
You tell us whether the evidence given to the court and jury in the case now in hearing for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Daniel Whitley, W-H-I-T-L-E-Y.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a paramedic firefighter with the Town of Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire?
I was hired in March of '06.
And prior to that work with the Canton Fire Department, did you work within that same field in any other capacity for any other company?
Yes, correct. I worked for American Medical Response out of Brockton as an EMT intermediate and a paramedic for 5 years.
And you're a certified paramedic, is that correct?
Correct.
And how long have you held that certification?
It was, I believe, November of 2006 that I got that certification.
And is there any sort of continuing educational component or recertification process that's involved with being a certified paramedic?
Yes, we recertify every 2 years. We're required to hold basic life support card, which is just generally CPR, and advanced cardiac life support, which is ACLS. It's more dealing with EKGs and how to run resuscitations, cardiac arrests, things of that nature.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th into January 29th of 2022, were you working with the Canton Fire Department on those dates?
Yes.
What kind of shift were you working on that?
24-hour shift, 8 a.m. to 8 a.m.
And where were you assigned on that particular date?
The Ponkabog Station, Station 2.
The Ponkabog Station, where is that located within Canton?
The north side of town on Southmont Street.
And how were you assigned to a specific duty or a specific?
Yes, I was assigned to Ambulance 2 with Jason Becker. I was a field training officer at that point, and he was just finishing up his field training after he recently became certified as a paramedic.
And now, at some point shortly after 6 a.m., were you aware of a call or dispatch in regard to Station House 1?
Yes, we had just returned from a previous call about 5 a.m. and heard the tones go off. Actually, we were in the day room, which is where it's the living room of a fire station. And we heard the tones go off, we heard the police going to Fairview Road. And we just kind of sat and were wondering what was going on there.
Now, you yourself, you and firefighter Becker, were you dispatched to a call as well, approximately 6:41 or 6:42 a.m.?
Yes.
And at the time that you received that dispatch, what, if anything, were you aware of with regard to the prior call that the other ambulance went?
So when the tones go off between the two stations, we're able to hear what the dispatch complaint is, what they're going for, and it came in as, I believe, CPR in progress. In the snow or something to that regard. So we knew that it was a fairly serious call that Station 1 had gone to.
Now, when you received your dispatch at approximately 6:42 a.m. or so, what was that call in regard to, and where did you respond?
We were dispatched for a Section 12.
And as far as your assignments within the ambulance between yourself and firefighter Becker, with regard to this call, who was doing what?
I was driving. He's what we call the tech, the lead paramedic on the case. That's just generally how we operate.
And from your response, or your driving from Station 2 to Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you observe or experience en route in between the two?
At that point, it was snowing pretty heavily. We were coming down Chapman Street, getting ready to take the right onto Fairview. We nearly slid off the road, making the turn onto Fairview. It was snowing that heavily, and I don't believe the roads had been really plowed or treated or anything like that for us to, so it was pretty slippery.
Now, in addition to ambulance number 2 that you and firefighter Becker were in, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatus was dispatched to this call as well?
There was Engine 3, which is the District 1 engine, and at least 2 police cruisers. And then another gray SUV kind of further down from where we parked.
Now, when you arrive in this area on Fairview Road, what, if anything, do you sort of observe as far as who's there when you arrive?
When I got out, my Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Park were there.
And they were on the engine, is that correct?
They were on the engine, correct.
Now, beyond sort of the personnel from your department, you mentioned that there were some police officers there as well?
Yes, Melanie and Sarah, and then 2 other females, at least 2 other females.
And the other 2 females, where were they when you first sort of get out of the ambulance?
A few yards ahead of us, a few dozen yards ahead of us, I'd say.
And were there any other vehicles beyond sort of first responders that you observed on?
Just that other gray SUV.
And so I guess my question is, where were the 2 females that you observed in relation to the gray SUV?
Near it, maybe in front of, maybe one was inside. There were 3 females there.
And at some point while you're on scene, you learned the identity of your patient, correct?
Yes.
And what was the name of the patient?
Karen Reed.
And you had some conversation with Karen Reed that day, is that correct?
Yes,
And do you see Karen Reed in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's seated right at that table right there.
I'm sorry, if you could just point as to where she is.
Right here.
No, it's just as record reflect identification.
Okay.
Now, when you first sort of arrive on scene, who, if anyone, is the first person that you talk to?
Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Pock.
And following that conversation, who, if anyone, you speak to?
Probably briefly Lieutenant Mullaney, but more, Officer Mullaney and Officer Saraf.
Now, following your conversation, well, let me ask you this sort of in general terms. When you respond to a call for a Section 12, what is sort of the protocol that you go through in regard to that?
Whether it's a Section 12 or any call, basically, the lead tech generally takes over immediate patient care, goes over, assesses. Usually the partner will go over and try and find out background details, try and find not only, well, especially for a Section 12, you want to get, the tech will get, which is Jason's role, the patient story, and then I'll get everyone else's story.
And at some point, you have a conversation with Ms. Reed as well?
Oh, yes.
And where is that in relation to vehicles on scene? So what is that initial conversation?
The initial conversation, she was very upset. She kept saying, so we had a Section 12 written, and that was to take her to the hospital because she made threats against her life, saying, I don't want to live anymore. If my husband dies, I don't want to be alive anymore. And myself and Jason and Lieutenant Woodbury were kind of like, well, that's seemingly more in the lines of normal grieving process after something traumatic happens to a loved one, whether they're going to die or not. We kind of didn't feel like it kind of led to that level of a Section 12 to have her transported to the hospital. So at that point, I exited the ambulance and I went to speak with Officer Saraf, and I said, this kind of doesn't, if we want her to be at the hospital, get a full eval, we're going to need more than just, if my husband dies, I want to die, because that seems just like normal grieving things to say. And so I went back to the ambulance. He went, I don't know where he went. I don't know whether it was cruiser or what. But he came back, notified me that her...
Sustained.
And from that conversation, did you receive more information or more clarity as to statements that Ms. Reed had made?
Yes, Officer Saraf had said that...
Objection.
So not what he said, sir. So
we were informed
unmuted.
that...
Objection.
I'm not sure.
So you can't testify to what somebody else told you. You can when there's no objection regarding what Ms. Reed told you,
okay.
But you can't testify what anybody else told you.
Okay.
So when I say sustain, that means you have to stop.
Okay.
And the lawyer will ask another question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Firefighter Whaley, at some point, specific to your conversations with the defendant, Ms. you described sort of her demeanor or any observations you made in relation to that as you were speaking with her.
Yes, she was very upset. She kept asking if there was any chance. She kept asking us if we knew if the person Ambulance 1 had transported was alive or dead, and we could not speak to that. She asked if somebody could be alive in the snow without a jacket for many hours. And at that point, we were just trying to give her any hope that whomever A1 transported was still alive. And we kind of just talked about far off hypothermia cases where, kids have fallen in rivers and been submerged for many minutes, maybe even hours, and survived with no neurological deficits. So we were just trying to give her some sort of hope on the way to the hospital that there was a chance that her husband could be alive.
Now, at this point, what, if anything, did you know about sort of the relationship between your patient, the defendant, Ms. Reed, and the patient from Ambulance 1 that had been transported previously?
She identified him as her husband.
And is that something that she said once or more than once?
Many, many times.
Now, she asked you some questions about his status and made specific reference to his clothing. Is that correct?
The only thing I recall is asking if he could have survived without a jacket.
Now, as far as these conversations that you had with Ms. Reed, where did they occur in relation to the ambulance?
They were in the back of the ambulance.
And who, if anyone, was present in the back of the ambulance beyond yourself and the defendant?
Jason Becker.
And with reference to, you mentioned that firefighter Becker was sort of the lead paramedic or the lead tech on this, is that correct?
Yes.
So is there, from sort of his role and your role, what are some of the sort of differences in the duties and responsibilities in relation, we'll call it?
So for any Section 12, our department policy is there will be 2 EMTs, paramedics, firefighters with during transport at all times. That's both for our safety and the patient safety. So that's why it wasn't just 2 EMTs or paramedics driving to the hospital. I was in back with Jason, and Sam Park was driving.
Now, as far as you testified earlier about observations of her being upset or distraught, is that correct?
Correct.
Was that consistent throughout your interaction with her, or?
No. There would be episodes where she would go from crying in her hands to all of a sudden perking up. She was crying about having to take care of kids, saying she couldn't do it. And I was saying, you can do this. It's not as hard as it seems. She kept saying, I can't take care of these kids. They're not my kids, and they're not his kids. That's when I figured out who Ambulance 1 transported. And I was saying, well, it seems like you have a good, strong support system. People who came and helped you in a blizzard to help come find your husband. She said, she asked me if I knew Kerry Roberts. I said I did. She said anybody who knows Kerry Roberts wouldn't say those things. And that kind of took me aback a bit. It seemed strange to say something like that after you were just crying because your husband was dead.
Take you back just within...
I was just kind of surprised.
If I could take you back within that just for a minute. So you had testified that during that, her description, you sort of realized who was the patient in Ambulance 1, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, made you realize, or who did you think it was?
I live in and grew up in the Ponkpog neighborhood of Canton, and Mr. O'Keefe was known for taking on his niece and nephew after, I'm sorry, I'm not sure positive of the relationship, but I believe it was his sister and his brother-in-law passed away, and it was something people admired him for, people looked up to him for. But I was able to, I also, I moved into the Ponkpog neighborhood back after living outside of Canton for a few years. The O'Keefes lived diagonally across from me. I never had any sort of interaction with him or anything. When I moved in, my wife was probably about 6 months pregnant, and I had 2 toddlers, so I was pretty busy. I figured he was pretty busy. I never even had a chance to introduce myself or anything before he moved to Meadows, which is how I kind of figured out.
Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning.
Okay, next, sustained. Next question.
Now, you had also mentioned during your conversation with the defendant that she had said some things about Kerry Roberts, correct?
Correct.
And how is it that you know Kerry Roberts?
Well, Kerry lives around the corner from me.
Objection.
No, I'll allow that. Next question, please.
How long have you known Kerry Roberts?
Just from moving back into the neighborhood, she would run the neighborhood block party, and she put out that she would like the fire truck there on the neighborhood Facebook page, so I volunteered to bring the fire truck to the neighborhood block party.
And was Ms. Roberts seen on Fairview when you arrived in your ambulance?
Yes.
So she was one of the other females along with the defendant?
Correct.
Now, with reference to when you brought up as far as support system and included Ms. Roberts within that, what, if anything, did the defendant say about Ms. Roberts?
Objection.
Sustained. Next question, please.
Now, this conversation that you had with the defendant in the ambulance, about how long a period of time are we talking about?
20, 25 minutes.
And beyond what you've already testified to, what did sort of that conversation consist of, or what was the sort of tone and tenor of that conversation?
Again, we were just trying to give her any support. She was, once we were getting closer to the hospital, we
Objection.
So the tone and tenor. So what can you tell us about that? That's admissible, Mr. Yannetti. Go ahead.
The tone, she would go from being almost despondent to when she asked me if I knew Kerry Roberts, the only tone I can use to describe it is snarky.
Objection. Move to strike.
I'll strike that.
Now, you transported to a Good Samaritan, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you, during the transport, where are you in relation to Ms. Reed from Fairview to Good Samaritan?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
During the transport, Ms. Reed is where within the ambulance?
I believe we have what we call a tech bench, which is a long bench. There's the ambulance stretcher, and then next to the ambulance stretcher is, we call it the CPR seat, and then that's where Miss Reed sat. And then I was in what we call the airway seat, which is basically like a captain's chair behind the stretcher.
And in addition to yourself and the defendant, who, if anyone, else was sort of in the back of the ambulance at that time?
During transport?
Yes.
During transport, it was just me, Jason Becker, and Miss Reed.
Okay. So yourself along with firefighter Becker in the back, correct?
Correct.
Who was driving the ambulance?
Sam Park.
Now, when you arrived at Good Samaritan, what, if anything, happened?
Miss Reed was asking to be able to see John, and I made the decision that I would run ahead to see if that was in the realm of possibility with the emergency room physician there. So I ran ahead. I came into they call it the code room at Good Sam, and I asked if the wife could see the husband. The ER doctor asked if she would be upset. I said if she would be upset if she was allowed to or not. And I said she's going to be upset. I believe she's going to be upset either way. He was asking if she would get in the way of the resuscitation efforts, and I said it's possible. She's very upset.
And so once you arrive at the hospital with the patient, where do you go along with Ms. Reed?
We escorted her down to we call it the psych hall or the behavioral hall at Good Sam.
And about how long was it after you escorted her into the hospital that you stayed with her following that?
At least 10 minutes.
And during those 10 minutes, how would you describe sort of her behavior or demeanor during that time?
Objection.
No, he can testify to that.
He was giving the nurses a hard time about, I'm sorry, she was giving the nurses a hard time about having to get into a Johnny, about having to submit a urine sample. Even the AR techs went to the physician who was in the code room to see if she could not have to wear a Johnny, and the ER doc said no, if she's in the psych hall, she's a psych patient, needs to be in a Johnny. So at that point, there was just a nurse and a tech. We don't usually leave a psych patient with just a single nurse and a tech, so we decided to wait until security had gotten there before we left.
May I have one moment?
Yes.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, Mr. Whitley, when you showed up, you learned that Karen Reed was the patient that you were to deal with, correct?
Correct.
And it was your expectation that she would be going to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
One of the things that you do when you transport somebody to the hospital is you try to get a medical history, correct?
Yep.
Why is that important?
Generally, we get pertinent medical history to pass on to the hospital. So if something were to happen where the patient wasn't able to describe their past medical history, it gets passed on to the next caregiver, which would be the nurses, doctors at the hospital.
Okay. More information is always better than less information, correct?
I would say so.
And with regard to Ms. Reed, did you take a medical history from her?
I assume Jason did.
Okay. Did you learn the results of that medical history?
You'd have to refer to Jason's report.
I may have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Whitley, if I I'm actually going to show you two documents with your permission. One would be Jason's report.
Okay.
And you were talking about Jason Becker, correct?
Correct.
The other is a police report from Sergeant Yuri Buchnick. I'm going to give you the second page of that.
Okay. So let's do them one at a time.
Sure. And you've asked for Jason Becker's report, so I'll give you that first, okay?
Okay.
And when I approach you, I'm going to hand this to you, and I just ask you to look at it silently by yourself.
Okay.
And then look up at me when you're done.
Okay.
Going to collect that from you, if you don't mind.
The first report was the NFIRS report from my lieutenant.
Was Jason Becker's report included in it as
Yes.
well?
Yep.
Having reviewed those documents, does that refresh your memory as to the medical history that was taken?
Yes.
And what can you tell us about that?
Just lists multiple sclerosis.
What is multiple sclerosis?
I believe it's a neurodegenerative disease where the myelin sheathing of the trying to think of the word here, but
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
no, I understand.
I'm sure you do. It's a disease.
It's a disease that's progressive and has neurological muscle control things involved with it.
And when you say progressive, that means it gets worse over time as you age?
As I understand it.
And that was the medical history you got from Karen Lee?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
All right. So, sir, you are all set. Thank you, Mr. Whitley. Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. We'll call Mr. Jason Becker to the stand.
Please watch your step. Sure. You get there, please face that clerk and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the understanding of the court and jury in the case now hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
First name is Jason, last name is Becker, B-E-C-K-E-R.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a firefighter paramedic, Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire Department?
5.5 years.
And prior to that, what, if any, other employment did you have sort of within that same field?
I worked at Found Ambulance and South Shore Hospital.
How long did you work at each of those respective positions?
Found Ambulance was about 5 years. South Shore Hospital, approximately 3 years.
And with regard to South Shore Hospital, what is it that you did there?
I was a nursing assistant in the emergency room.
And with regard to your work as a firefighter paramedic for the Canton Fire Department, you a certified paramedic?
Yes.
And when did you first receive that?
For 2021.
And is that something that you receive, or when you receive that, is something that goes on in perpetuity, or is that something that you have a continuing educational component or recertification?
It's con ed education. You do it 2 years, you have to recertify.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022 into January 29th, 2022. Were you working on that occasion?
I was.
And where were you assigned, I'm sorry, what type of shift were you working on that occasion?
What type of shift?
Yes, like what hour to what hour?
8 a.m. to 8 a.m., 24 hours.
So 8 a.m. on the 28th until 8 a.m. on the 29th?
Correct.
And where were you assigned on that day?
I was at Canton Station 2, Ambulance 2.
And who, if anyone else, was assigned with you to Ambulance 2 at Station 2 on that day?
Daniel Whitley, firefighter Daniel Whitley.
Now, at some point when you were working on the 29th, shortly after a call for station house number 1.
Yes.
And what, if anything, were you aware of as far as that earlier call?
There was a man down initial dispatch. And CPR in progress.
At approximately 6:41 a.m. or so, did you, your station,
possible second.
Whitley in ambulance 2, what if any other sort of calls on?
Canton, engine 3.
And if you know, who, if anyone, was on Canton engine 3 at that time?
Lieutenant Greg Woodbury, firefighter Sam Park.
Now, with regard to the ambulance that you were in with firefighter Whitley, what were sort of, let me ask you this, between sort of call volume, what, if any, sort of policy or protocol is there as far as who does what on a particular call?
We switch off.
And so on this particular call that you were dispatched to Fairview Road, what were sort of each of your respective duties and responsibilities between yourself and firefighter Whitley?
Firefighter Whitley was the driver at that point, and it was my tech, is what it was called. So the next patient would be mine.
And so as sort of you were the lead tech on this, is that correct?
Correct.
And so as far as the lead tech's role, what, if any, duties or responsibilities do you have in regard to writing a report?
It's my report that'd be writing.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
With documents, just ask you to review that, look up for me.
The first report up here is the engines. Second one would be mine.
You recognize the first few pages of that as the engines report, and the last few are yours, correct?
Correct.
And that's your report with relation to this dispatch and this call, correct?
Correct.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I want the seat to introduce and admit as the next.
So both reports through this witness? Is there any objection?
May I just take a look at the DA's copy? May we approach?
Okay. Bless you.
Bless you.
With that addendum, I would seek to introduce and admit that as the next exhibit.
Okay.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, can I return the report to the witness?
Yes.
Testimony. Now, sir, when you first sort of arrive in the area of 34, when you arrive in the area of Fairview Road, what, if anything, is it is it that you first observe upon your arrival?
Coming down the street or on scene?
Yes, coming down the street.
Coming down the street, just live police lights. You could see the fire engine, and I believe I said it's one black SUV.
And where is it that you and the ambulance sort of park in reference to those other vehicles that you see?
I believe we parked, if the SUV was facing towards us, we parked to the left. I don't recall where the police cruiser was, though.
And when you first arrive there, who, if anyone, is it that you first speak with when you get there?
When we got out of the ambulance, I passed Officer Saraf and Officer Mulaney. They kind of briefed us, and then I walked over to the black SUV.
And when you walk over to the black SUV, who is it that you observe in that black SUV?
I saw 2 females.
And of those 2 females, do you see one of them in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
Right over there, the jacket on.
That's the record reflect identification of the defendant by the
Okay.
Now, with respect to the defendant, Ms. Reed, where within the vehicle is she when you first come up to the vehicle and observe?
When I remember, she was in the front passenger seat.
And what, if any, knowledge did you have as far as the defendant, Ms. Reed, and her relationship to the earlier call that ambulance 1 had been dispatched with?
I had very little. I think we had gotten briefed that she was the wife of the previous patient.
And was that something that she had stated or something that somebody else had stated? Where does that awareness come
I believe it was one of the Canton police officers that said it.
I'm sorry, what was that answer?
It was one of the Canton police officers.
Okay.
And so when you walk up to the car, what is it that you say to her, or what, if any, conversation did you have with Ms. Reed at that point?
So I went up to the window and introduced myself and just kind of asked her what was going on.
And how did she respond to that?
She was kind of, she was distraught, she was crying. She kind of told us that the statements she may have made, she didn't mean it because of the events that she had just gone through.
What, if anything, did she say about that? If anything, did she say about what she had gone through?
That she had just done CPR on her husband.
And so she referred to him as her husband as well?
Yes.
And this conversation that you had sort of at the side of the SUV, is that through the door, through the window?
From what I recall, it was through the window.
And at some point, does the conversation move to the ambulance?
Correct.
About how long was the conversation at the vehicle before the conversation shifted to the ambulance?
5 to 10 minutes.
And as far as your dispatch for a psych or a Section 12, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury sort of that process, just in general terms first, as far as what does that process entail?
And when we get on scene?
Yes.
For a section?
Yes, please.
We go on scene, we kind of look at the environment, see what the environment's like, see if the patient's cooperative, uncooperative, what their demeanor is, if there's any obvious self-harm. If there's none, we kind of go up and talk to them, get a rapport, and ask them some basic triage questions.
And is that sort of the policy or the protocol or what you followed in this instance with Ms. Reed?
Correct.
Now, beyond what she had indicated to you initially, what, if anything, was she asking you during the course of your conversation with her once you were in the ambulance?
She kept asking if he was dead or could he be dead.
Is that something that she said once or more than once or something else?
More than once.
And could you describe sort of the tone of her voice when she was saying?
It was pretty, it's kind of like it was a rapid kind of pressured speech. She was just a lot repetitive.
And as you were speaking with her, what, if any, observations did you make of her facial area?
She had blood on her face and her neck and her chin. Blood around her mouth, her neck and chin.
And so with regard to sort of any earlier...
She said she made him because she just went through a traumatic event. And she had no plan on acting on it.
Now, what, if anything, are you doing as far as documentation goes with respect to vital signs, things like that?
Well, it depends on the situation. In a situation of misreads, I took a regular, just vital signs, pulse oximetry to see her heart rate. But for someone like a female psych patient, it's more verbal.
And as far as any of those sort of vital signs and things that you took, what, if anything, abnormal did you note in regard to that?
There was nothing too abnormal. Just the heart rate might have been a little bit high, but within normal range.
Could you please keep your voice up, sir? Thank you.
Sorry. With the vital signs, her heart rate was a little high. It was 98, but it was nothing concerning.
That you're having this conversation with her in the back of the ambulance, how would you describe her?
She would have periods of calmness, and then other periods she would. But all in all, she was cooperative with us.
Now, at some point, she's cooperative, correct, and agrees to go?
Eventually, yes.
When you say eventually, was there some conversation related to that?
We kind of mentioned to her basically what a Section 12 is. And unfortunately, she'd have to come with us voluntarily or involuntarily.
So you're explaining the process to her, is that correct?
Correct.
Eventually, she agrees to go, correct?
Correct.
As far as the transport goes, who, if anyone, is in the back of the ambulance with her during the transport period?
Me and Firefighter Whitley.
And who, if anyone, was driving the ambulance to the hospital?
Firefighter Paul.
What hospital did you transport Ms. Reed to?
We went to the Good Samaritan Hospital.
Now, during the course of transfer to the hospital or transport to the hospital, what, if anything else, did Ms. Reed say with reference to children?
She was talking about children, and she was unsure, and she didn't know if she'd be able to take care of them. She was worried about that.
She was worried about that?
Yeah, she was worried about who would take care of the children if he was pronounced dead.
And what, if anything, did she say about herself in reference to the children?
She didn't think that she could take care of them on her own.
Now, as far as this other person, how did she refer to that person in relationship to herself?
She was calling him husband.
Now, with reference to this particular, with reference to Ms. Reed in this conversation, what, if anything, did she say in regard to the last time that she had spoken to who she called her husband?
She had said that they had gotten into an argument. She was sad because that was the last thing she had said to him, was the argument, but she didn't go into detail on what the argument was about or what was said.
Now, with regard to her speaking about what, if any, further conversation did either yourself or Firefighter Whitley have with her in regard to that?
With children?
Yes.
I don't recall.
The other female in the vehicle when you first arrived, did you know who that was?
I don't know who she was.
And at any point in time, subsequent to that, did you learn who she was?
I did.
And who did you learn her to be?
She was Miss Carrie Roberts.
And with relation to your conversation with Ms. Reed on that day of January 29th, what, if anything, did she say about Ms. Roberts?
Objection.
Sustained.
The regard to the sort of medical questions that you were asked, from those medical questions, what, if any, questions would you typically ask someone with relation to consumption of alcohol or drugs?
Well, part of the psych assessment, I asked if she had taken any drugs or alcohol, and she had denied it at that point.
She said that she had not, correct?
Correct.
The observations that you testified to earlier in regard to her, and by her I mean Ms. Reed's demeanor, did that change at all during the course of your interaction with her, or was that consistent throughout?
Demeanor as in...
It's a poorly phrased question. Let me try and rephrase it for you. So, with regard to her demeanor, throughout the course of your interaction with her, how would you describe that?
She was cooperative. Then she'd be calm, and then eventually she would kind of get a little agitated and repetitive questions. But she seemed distraught.
Now, with respect to the person she indicated was her husband, what, if any, questions did she ask either you or Firefighter Whitley or both in relation to him?
She was asking if he was dead, or could he be dead, could he be dead, and she said, could I have hit him?
Was that something that she asked once or more than once?
It wasn't a lot. It was more of, could he be dead, could he be dead?
So somewhat repetitive, is that correct?
Correct.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Firefighter Becker, just my own clarification. You testified earlier that first arriving on scene and first spoke with Ms. Reed, she indicated that there was some statements that she said there were some statements that she did not mean, correct?
Correct, suicidal statements.
And so, exactly. So my question is, that was in reference to the suicidal statements she had made prior to your arrival, correct?
Correct.
Not to any subsequent statements, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Rona. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You and I have never met, right?
I believe so.
I wanted to go back to one piece of testimony that you offered on direct examination, if I may.
Sure.
You had, in response to a question from the prosecutor about the medical history and your question to Ms. Reed about whether she had any alcohol to drink. I believe your answer today was she denied having drank alcohol the night before?
At the time that she was, she could have, I don't know if she drank alcohol the night before, but at that time I asked if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
I'm sorry, if I just didn't hear
Yeah,
that.
you need to keep your voice up, sir, or speak directly into the microphone.
I asked her if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
Oh, if she had any drugs?
Well, has she taken any drugs or alcohol? She said no.
Did you specify a time period?
I just assumed it'd be in the last few hours for the reason why we were there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Unsure if she had alcohol days prior, but for the reason why we were there.
Okay. So, was it your understanding that the two of you had an understanding of what you were asking?
Sure.
Objection, move to strike.
Yeah. So the objection sustained. It's stricken. Ask the question differently, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right. So, I guess with regard to your intent and your state of mind when you were asking that question, you were asking, had you taken any drugs or alcohol within the last few hours? That's what you meant to ask?
Objection.
So the objection sustained.
What did you specifically ask?
So when I ask a patient if any drugs or alcohol, I'm talking about at that point in time, but an hour before, 2 hours before, not days before, weeks before.
Okay.
So,
and this was at 6:40 in the morning,
correct?
Did you smell any alcohol on her at that time?
I did not.
Okay. You would agree that she did tell you at some point that she had alcohol the night before, correct?
No.
All right. So this is now, what's today, May 3rd of 2024?
Correct.
And this happened back in January, on January 29th of 2022?
Correct.
You were interviewed by a Trooper Michael Proctor on February 14th of 2022. Do you recall that?
I recall meeting with him, yes.
And February 14th of 2022 would have been a little bit more than 2 weeks after 2022, correct?
Correct.
Your memory of what Karen Reed told you about whether she had anything to drink the night before would have been much better on February 14th of 2022 when you were talking to Trooper Michael Proctor than it would be today, correct?
Correct.
Because your memory doesn't get better over time, correct?
Certain circumstances, sure.
All right. And with regard to whether Karen had indicated that she took any drugs, you told Trooper Proctor she said that she had not, correct?
Correct.
With regard to whether she had had alcohol the night before, you told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that she did consume alcohol last night, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to see a sidebar on this. Please bring that with you, please.
Did you miss anything? Did you not hear anything?
With your permission, I'll repeat the question.
Sure.
You told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that Karen had told you that she did consume alcohol the previous night, correct?
If that's in his notes.
Well, is your memory exhausted as to whether you told him that?
I don't recall.
If you saw his report with your statements in it, would that refresh your memory?
Sure.
It's a two-page report. I'll give you both, actually. It's a two-page report. I'll give you both pages, but I have highlighted a line on the second page, so I would direct you to that. May I approach?
Yes. And take your time reading it, sir.
Yes, yeah. And please read it silently to yourself and look up at me when you're done.
So I did say.
So, Mr. Becker, a couple of things. Wait for a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But also,
Sorry.
you have to keep your voice up.
Okay.
I'm close to you and I'm having trouble hearing you. Most
Okay.
of the jurors are further away.
And the way this works is I have to collect that from you and then ask you a question, okay?
So.
If I may approach you on?
Yes.
Having reviewed that document, does that refresh your memory as to whether or not Karen Reed, or strike that? Having reviewed that report, does that refresh your memory as to the fact that you...
Does that refresh your memory?
Does that refresh your memory?
It does.
Okay. And so did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 14th that Karen Reed had told you on January 29th that she had consumed alcohol the night before that?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that when you were listening to her talk at times, that her speech was very rapid?
Correct.
And particularly when she had said the words, you know, is he dead, is he dead, she would repeat it repetitively, correct?
Correct.
And she was fixated on that, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to the last interaction that she spoke about with whom you thought she said her husband, she didn't give you any detail about that, correct?
She did not.
You don't know whether it was an in-person communication?
That wasn't my position to ask more details about that.
Oh, and I'm not criticizing you, sir. I'm just trying to get to what your knowledge was in terms of what information you got from her. So she didn't specify that it was an in-person communication, correct?
No.
She didn't specify as to whether it was a phone conversation?
She did not.
She didn't specify whether it was a text message exchange back and forth?
She did not.
And she didn't specify whether it was an angry voicemail that she left, correct?
She did not.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Sorry. I have nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
All right. All right, Mr. Becker, or Firefighter Becker, you are all set, sir. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. Yes, you can leave that right where it is. Thank you, sir. Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure. Does it make sense that rather than starting with another witness, figure it's a Friday afternoon, it's been a long week for you all, we'll excuse you at this point. So please do not discuss this case with anyone, don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, disregard it and let us know. And have a great weekend. Monday will be a full day, we'll see you first thing Monday night.
Please rise for the jury. Rise right this way.
Oh, sure. May be seated.
I think there's an exhibit in the witness stand. All right, because I've decided that it makes more sense to do exhibits the old-fashioned way because it's simply not working out. My suggestion is that we take what we have that have actually been introduced, because I know you pre-marked nearly 600 exhibits. They have not been introduced into evidence. So we have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 14, 18, and there are additional that are in the 300s and 200s. So what I would like to do is take all of these, and I know Madam Court Reporter has been great about sticking around all late during the week to pre-mark things. This is more important to me that we get the record straight from this point. I would prefer the jurors to have the exhibits in order and not have numbers 200 and 300 in where they should be, 15 and 16. So what I would like you to all do is take a look at the exhibits that have actually been introduced. Their prior numbers, if you have referred to them by their prior numbers, I will permit you for the rest of the trial to say previously referred to as 308, but now exhibit 15, until you feel you don't need to do that anymore. So it means things are going to have to be renumbered. So Madam Court Reporter, was there anything else we needed to discuss on this? Is there anything else you need from the lawyers?